story, I guess, first of all, the way I came to brain health analytics in the first place was the quote that's on the brain health analytics main website from Carl Jung himself, and that actually caught me. I can't remember how I found it, but I was looking for something and I looked at that quote and it sent me to the brain health analytics website, and I'm like, what is this? And it's turned out to be a fantastic partnership. Um, so yeah, I'm Andrew Lavin. I'm a Jungian coach, which is coaching based on the psychological models and principles developed by Carl Jung. Carl Jung was more or less the originator of working with the unconscious. Jungian psychology is psychology of the unconscious. And so it was really interesting to me to come upon brain health analytics, which claimed to be a tool to access what they called subconscious patterns and subconscious content. I should say that there's a little bit of an academic debate between unconscious and subconscious. Um, and there probably is a distinction there. Jungians talk about the unconscious, brain health analytics talks about the subconscious. I more or less use the two terms interchangeably. I think for coaching and the work that we're doing, they more or less are, but just a word about that. Um, I come to coaching from the corporate world. I was in executive leadership for a number of financial services companies for a number of years and have sat at the table with the types of clients that a lot of us work with that are suffering from burnout, executive high stress environments, who are high performing, they're accomplished, and yet they're sitting there wrestling with a question that often they just can't name. It's there behind the surface. It's there buried somewhere deep, and it nags, but they can't quite name it, let alone answer it. And so those are a lot of the clients that I work with. And so I hope to tell you a little bit about today, what the cognitive clarity scan has done in my work to help me really zero in and focus on what those hidden questions and what those hidden patterns are that a lot of high performing individuals can't even identify themselves. Um, Trying to think which details I want to give them. Well, actually, let me just start with the sort of the story that I want to tell, and we'll go from there. Um, I was working with a client at the time that I started doing my brain health analytics certification process, and I had been working with her for about, I think it was about 2 months. She is a woman who had been trying for many years to break into the interior design profession in her locale, and had been struggling and just wasn't finding success. Her background, she graduated from a rather prestigious program in the field. She had lots of connections in the industry. She had established relationships with contractors and providers, and everything from the outside looked perfect for her. It looked like she was in the perfect position to start a really thriving, successful interior design business. And yet, for years, I think it had been about 3 years, she had just been hitting roadblock after roadblock. And so she came to me for coaching and how do I get my business started? Like, what's stopping me here? I don't understand it. Um, and for about 2 months, we talked about all of the things that she was seeing as blocks. It was that the contractors were irresponsible. It was that she didn't have enough in connections in the community, that people were really respecting her work, but then they were going out and hiring different designers, that she wasn't in with the right people. Um, and we worked through these in our coaching sessions, one after the other, and we were developing strategies. We were developing different approaches to dealing with all of these problems, trying to decide where they were coming from. And we just weren't getting anywhere. And it was probably about 2 months, and I was feeling like the coaching just wasn't successful. I think she was feeling the same way. And then the cognitive clarity scan kind of came along, and I thought, I need someone to try this out with. Let's give this a try. I don't have anything to lose. So this was my first experience with the scan, and I offered to have her take the scan and just see what it came up with. So she took the scan, and like Leanne's client, the highest scoring subconscious pattern that emerged was emotional deprivation. And as we looked at the results, unlike Leanne's client, that surprised her and she didn't understand. That didn't make any sense to her. She said she didn't feel emotionally deprived. She said it didn't make any sense, let alone understand how that could possibly be contributing to her professional uh, blocks that she was experiencing. Just didn't make sense to her. So what I want to do now is sort of put that up against the work that I do as a Jungian coach and show how the two of them together actually provide a really powerful tool for looking at what's in the unconscious. So we had the cognitive clarity scan on the one hand, giving my client some information that she didn't understand, that she didn't really know what to do with, didn't make sense to her. I then brought in some of my Jungian coaching tools. And what we did is I had my client, Ellen, I had her identify a symbol which represented this thing that she didn't understand, which was emotional deprivation. And so this is a lot of what I do with clients is we work with symbols. And so what I'll do is I'll have a client go through a series of symbols and I'll just say, pick the one that stands out, pick the one that to you represents, in this case, emotional deprivation. So we went through all these pictures and no, and she kept going on. Eventually we came to an image of Poseidon, the Greek god with the trident, the god of the sea. And she's like, that one, that's the one. Okay. And so what we did is we did a Gestalt dialogue exercise where I had her do a dialogue with Poseidon. And so she starts having this conversation with Poseidon and she starts complaining to Poseidon about her business and about all the problems with the vendors and the contractors and she can't get her business going. Kind of the same thing she had been doing with me for a couple of months. And at one point, well, Poseidon, the way she responded as Poseidon was very dismissive. It was very cold. It was very disconnected, which I thought was interesting. But at one point in that conversation she was having, she paused and speaking as Poseidon, she said, "Why do you keep calling me Poseidon?" And Ellen answered and said, "Well, you're Poseidon. That's your name." And Poseidon responded and said, "That's not my name. Stop calling me Poseidon." Client said, "Well, then what's your name?" And the image responded, "My name's Clark." Clark is her husband. And she just started weeping. She just started crying because in that moment, the power of the symbol and the Jungian work that I was engaging with, combined with the cognitive clarity scan result of emotional deprivation, those two things came together in what was really a rather magical moment of this insight that emotional deprivation is something that she was experiencing and engaging with the primary relationship in her life, and that actually it had nothing to do with the vendors or the contractors or the ins in the industry, um, that it was about her husband. One of the things we talk about in as Jungian coaches a lot is that it's never about the thing that you think it's about. And so anytime a client comes to us with an issue, a problem they're trying to solve, a challenge that they're trying to overcome, a relationship that's in trouble, we're always looking for what's it really about, because it's never about what you think it's about. And so in this case, her struggles with her profession and her career weren't about all of the things she thought it was about. It was about her husband. What's interesting is that once we started working with that, she took the scan a couple of months later and it was really unchanged. So I can't give this success story about how the scan changed, because she started going to therapy with her husband and doing couples therapy, a really long and slow process. And so that work sort of got taken out and engaged someplace else. But and the scan didn't change. But what happened was her career started taking off. It removed the block from her career. And now we're about 3 months on, 4 months on. And I just got a message from her about 2 weeks ago that she has a firm that she's opening. She just secured space for her firm. She'll be opening her firm, I think, in the beginning of September. She's got clients coming on. And interestingly, at the same time, she still has this thing with her husband that she's working on the side. But what it did is it removed that as a block to her career, which I think is a perfect example of what we're calling these hidden patterns that are affecting things in ways that we don't realize, in ways that we don't understand. And so the cognitive clarity scan combined with these Jungian tools just really magically said, there's what it is. Let's set that aside, and now you can go forward with this challenge that you're bringing to me as a coach. So yeah, I would say, like Lan, it's just been amazingly gratifying to have this tool that so quickly and efficiently and accurately helps me identify what it is to work on. Jungian tools can be really slow and they require a lot of patience. And so, especially as I'm working with a lot of executives and these driven, successful businessmen and women, they don't have a lot of patience. They don't have a lot of time. And so, one of the things that I've struggled with is how do you get the hook in when it seems to require too much patience, sometimes too much time. And the cognitive clarity scan has been a great addition to my tool set that just gives me a quick, efficient way to find the thing to focus in on that I can then start doing the work with. And so it's been a fantastic tool for me to add to my practice. I'm grateful to be a part of this. Interesting because it's kind of shifted my clientele, which was kind of what I was looking for. I've worked with a lot of people who are in the artistic and sort of more right-brained sort of professions, and they tend to be more amenable to spending a little bit more time and taking the process a little bit more slowly. And so that's been fantastic. That aligns perfectly with Jungian work. But there was this block for me in dealing with the kinds of people that brain health analytics talks a lot about, these highly driven, very successful executive types, where I just wasn't able to break into that clientele quite as well because, as you say, they just don't have the time. And so it's been really helpful to have this to just get right to it.